Well, welcome back from the break. Now, June 8th every year is celebrated across the world as World Oceans Day. The day is marked annually to celebrate our world's shared ocean and our personal connection to the sea, as well as to raise awareness about the crucial role the ocean plays in our lives and the important ways people can help protect it. There's a global sounding clarion call for us to protect the ocean from unsustainable practices and ensuring a future of thriving marine life for generations to come. Well, this morning we've been joined by Professor Akpalu, Dean of the School of Research and Graduate Studies, GIMPA, Director for Environment for Development Initiative in Ghana. Prof is with me in the studio. Prof, good morning.
Good morning.
I hope all is well. I wish there was a greeting we could greet you. It was a Janama Farifo, is that how they call it?
Yeah.
A Janama Farifo. Yankopo or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't speak the language.
Anyway, so Prof is with us here. We're also joined, or we will be joined via Zoom by Dr. Edna Kwansa, Manager Fisheries Science and Research at the Environmental Justice Foundation, EJF, foundation that's been doing a lot of work in the marine sector and as well as the environmental sector too. And then also Nana Joe Solomon, Acting President, Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council. And you won't talk fisheries issues in Ghana without this man. He's really there, at every turn that you do have in terms of the fisheries sector. Prof, let me start with you here. So as we speak, what are the major issues confronting fisheries or the ocean in this country? Let's start off from home, then we can, go worldwide.
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. Our problems are quite many, and let me begin from here. When you look at the catches that we've been getting from our ocean over the years, from 1992, thereabout coming down, you realize that the catches have been going down. In fact, catch per vessel, which we also call catch per unit effort, has been declining rapidly. A canoe, for example, would have caught about 35 tons a year, but now catches about 15. So you can see that catch levels have gone down. And why are we experiencing catch levels going down? It's all because we have overcapacity. There are too many vessels out there catching fish. And in addition to us having too many canoes catching fish, we also have foreign vessels. Some are branded as Ghanaian vessels that are also catching fish that our locals are supposed to be catching, and therefore reducing the stock. And for that matter, the catch that every canoe can catch, and then reducing their income levels that are falling about 40% from 2006 to the current, and so on and so forth.
So it means that we are overfishing?
We are overfishing. Because of overcapacity, we have too many vessels. We have about 12,000 plus, depending on where you look, canoes. We are supposed to have about 8,000, 9,000 of them to be able to generate the highest benefit from the fisheries. And then in addition to that, we have these trawlers that have done a lot of harm over the years. A few things have changed recently, but they've done a lot of harm, targeting the small pelagic or fishes that normally are caught by the small scale fishers, and thereby worsening the situation over time.
But I believe there's someone in charge,
yes,
of regulating the activities of these canoes and vessels. So why are we overfishing when someone's job is to ensure that the sector is regulated to the benefit of the players?
Well, the reasons are quite many. First of all, there's what we call misperception of biophysical dynamics of the stocks, in the sense that because of the way fish, you cannot observe fish in water, in the ocean. And as a result, we have this misperception that the sea can never dry. So those who live by the sea, although they see the trend going down, they always want to attribute it to something else than themselves. We have what we call self-serving bias. They always say, well, somebody else is causing the problem or something else. So that is one of the problems, that there is misperception of the dynamics of the stocks, the fact that the stocks are going down, and we don't seem to appreciate that from the point of view of resource users. And from the point of view of politicians, and here I'm not referring to any particular political party or anything, fishermen constitute a big force, a big political capital, and you don't want to lose that. So if they don't want to comply with you to implement some of these regulations that will have short-term consequences, make it harder for them to survive within the very short term when the policies are introduced, it is very difficult on the part of regulators or political those who are in charge to implement some of those policies. So there is some reluctance for fear of losing political capital. They may vote against you if you do the right things. And then there is also the political interest, where people make money directly. Our politicians tend to make money directly, illegally from some of these activities. So they don't want to change things. So this has been the trend over the years. And as I said, we've seen some positive changes occurring recently, but then we still need to do a lot more if we have to bring the situation under control.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it means that the fishermen themselves or the sector players themselves are the cause of where we are.
Partly the cause because this is a common pool resource or an open access resource. If you don't catch it, someone else goes to catch it. So when you have a resource that is managed as an open access, where every Ghanaian who can acquire a vessel can go there and catch fish, that resource can easily be depleted. Everybody is running out there to catch the fish, so the resource can get depleted. So the nature of the management of this resource becomes part of the problem. And in addition to that, plays in this political interest where politicians who are supposed to regulate the resource are afraid that if they do so, they may suffer some consequences, so they are very reluctant to enforce some of these regulations. And in addition to that, there are also situations where playing that game also brings in some direct returns. For example, we have a situation where there is clear overcapitalization, many vessels, too many of them, and we are losing, for the artisanal alone, we are potentially losing about $100 million a year because of the overcapitalization. Because if you reduce the capacity, the fish stock the stock will grow up, will multiply, and then we can get more catch and more money. So we are potentially losing about $100 million. So the question is, if we have overcapacity of over 4,000 canoes or 5,000 canoes, why do you continue to subsidize the main fishing input, which is fishing fuel? So fishermen can easily buy it at 30% of the market price, go out there and chase the last fish to catch. It's because when the subsidies are rolled out, not all the subsidized fuel actually goes to the fishermen. Some are diverted, and this is no secret. So this becomes a gain for those who are involved. So that becomes part of the challenge. So for us to fight this problem, there is the need for us to work around all these issues.
All right, grateful. Let me go on Zoom now and speak to Nana Jojo Solomon, who is acting president, Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council. Nana, good morning to you, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm great. Well, the Prof has made it clear that where we are is partly as a result of the activities of fishermen. I hope do you agree with him that that is the case?
Partly yes, partly no.
Okay. Why do you say so?
Yes. The statement, partly it's the fault of fishers, but I think it's a little bit prejudiced because there are a lot of players within the sector. Like you rightly asked, Professor Akpalu, my comrade. Comrade, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir. The truth of the matter is that we have managers or regulators whose core mandate is to ensure that we are doing the right things. Yes, in every society, and especially looking at the numerical strength of the artisanal industry, yes, we're so huge that sometimes control is a little bit of a problem. But we cannot put all the problems at the doorstep of the fishermen. People are paid with the taxpayers' monies to ensure that after going to their fishery schools and being fishery scientists and whatnot, they have a job to do. Again, we are looking at those who have been mandated to also police our marine waters. We have the Marine Police, we have the Fisheries Enforcement Unit, we have the Monitoring, Control and Surveillance Unit. Again, we even have the Navy, who also, from time to time, even though it's not their core mandate, help, with enforcement. What are all these people doing? I even look at EPA, and then I don't know how they manage our toxic waste from the factories and from the industrial sectors. They all end up in the sea. You understand? And therefore, and I also believe that because of technology, fishermen are no more using, the old containers where they go with cups and take their water and, their potable water or the drinking water. So now they're all using sachet. Where does it end? Do we want to be reactive or we have to be proactive? By now, I believe that patents or innovations must come with how fishermen drink water at sea that will be environmentally friendly. All these things. So it is a multi-sectoral area where you cannot wait till there's crisis and then go and put it at the doorstep of the fishermen. Even the capacity of fishermen, must be built by the regulators, by the scientists, by people like Professor Akpalu, who, I stand up for him, anytime he has the opportunity, it also does his human job. But I'm saying that we fishers cannot take the blame. If the blame is 100%, we will take about 20%. Now let's look at those who also have the mandate to execute the 80%. So that is why I said yes and no. Yes, we are partly the reason.
Well, Nana, but when it comes to illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, I mean, the person who is to regulate the sector might not be in the canoe when you are deep in the ocean. It then falls directly at you, the fisherman, who is going to fish, to ensure that you don't allow yourself and your colleagues to do the things that they say they shouldn't do. When you do them, you are hurting your job, your livelihood. Isn't that the case? That you fishers should probably say that, well, for us to deal with the problems confronting us in terms of IUU, we have to take the responsibility.
I agree with you, sir. I agree with you. The issue itself is that sometimes, especially looking at the literacy level of the industry itself, some people may be doing things that are not environmentally friendly, that goes to hurt the ocean, that goes to hurt, Mother Nature. But they don't know. They have been to fishing schools. We haven't been to fishing schools. We are just peasant fishers. And therefore, that's why I said our capacities must be built. You understand? All this is going to, so it is not as a result of, we do not support any form of wrongdoing. And Professor Akpalu will tell you that as Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council, superintending over the artisanal fishery in Ghana, we work hand in hand with the regulators. We work hand in hand with enforcement. You understand? But like I'm saying, if you look at from the Volta region to the Western region, an industry that directly or indirectly, support livelihoods of about 3 million adult population. You understand? And like I said, the size of the industry is such that you get all manner of people there. And therefore, it is about we alone cannot profess to have all the answers to the questions. You understand? And therefore, I believe that those who have been to the school, who are knowledgeable, those who have been given the power to enforce, policy makers, like Professor Akpalu is saying, some policy makers do not even want to see the laws see the light of day. You understand? Because they have political interests here and there. It is an industry that promotes a lot of cartel activities, and therefore it's not very easy for us alone as Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council to control. You understand? Especially now too that we have oil and gas, within the marine space, and looking at our neighbors in Nigeria, what has happened, Somalia, what has happened. It is not. It's not that easy.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay. Yeah. We're also joined by Dr. Edna Kwanzaa, a manager in charge of fishery science and research at the Environmental Justice Foundation, EJF. Doc, grateful for joining us. Has research been able to point out the real impact of IUU on our fishery sector?
Good morning, and good morning to Professor Akpalu and Nana Jojo. Thank you so much. Yes, research has been able to point to the impacts of IUU in our sector. And when Professor Akpalu was speaking, he mentioned the fact that the industrial trawlers have done some harm, although there are some interventions now and some efforts which are helping them to be better. They did some harm in the past, and this is on the issue of IUU, specifically on cycle. And in our research, we were able to identify that this was really a cause or a factor in depleting our fish stocks, especially the small pelagics, which is largely depended on by the small-scale fisheries. And so we at EJF, we do a lot of in-house research where we look at the bycatch that is coming from the industrial trawl to see what they are catching, whether they are supposed to catch exactly what they are mandated to catch. And then we look at this against the law, specifically the LI 1968, to look at the sizes that they are catching. Whatever they are bringing out of the waters, is this right according to law per the sizes they are catching of the demersal species, and even if they have small pelagic species in their waters. So yes, research has been able to identify all these impacts to the sector or to the fisheries resources.
But in terms of monetary value, the Prof was mentioning some 100 million that we lose as a result of the over capacity in terms of the canoes that we have. Do we know how much we lose due to this IUU activities that the farmers, the fishers do engage in?
Yes, so the economists have done all these calculations, and for research in terms of the stock assessment, while the stock is being assessed to see how much we really have, we also have the MEY, that's the maximum economic yield, which looks at exactly how much of the stocks we need and how much we will be able to get in terms of our value. So these have been done by the economists to determine exactly the $100 million that are being lost in our fisheries resources.
Interesting. Nana was saying that fishers cannot really take it alone and that they need their capacities to be built. But I have followed the sector for a very long time. When I was at ATL, there was a program dedicated to fishers, and this is like, over a decade ago. So can we really say that fishers still don't have, don't understand the impact of this and that there's more to be done? If there's more to be done, what else do we need to do?
Yes.
Doc, I put this to Prof, sorry.
Oh, okay. I think to a very large extent, Nana is right that fishers alone cannot take the blame.
That's true.
And a typical situation is when we had this close season. You can see that a survey that we did majority of them actually complain that they do not have any alternative livelihoods. In fact, over 80% do not have any alternative livelihoods. And they did not basically support, they didn't want the season to be closed because it really had a serious impact on their livelihood. But then they also agreed that once it is implemented, they have to obey. And as you could see, there were no serious instances of anyone going to sea. So fishers, although they could be difficult in some situations because of the fact that they live off these resources, they comply by regulations when they are, convinced about it. So it's possible to manage fishers if you are able to provide them with a lot of information and educate them and help them to understand the consequences of their actions on the stock and their livelihoods and all that. But having said that, I don't want to discount the fact that, as you rightly said, they are not part of the problem. They are part of the problem. There are many instances where they outrightly reject some of these policies that are supposed to help the industry in the medium and long term. For example, the issue about premix subsidies now. I'm sure a government that decides to withdraw this will encounter problems. But then we have to, because if we are spending about $40 million every year just to subsidize an input that is causing further depletion of the stock, of which they only get about 20% or less, and the rest are diverted, I think it's a good idea. But then it will be very difficult to convince them on issues like this. So I think they are also partly to blame. But then the greater portion of the blame, of course, go to the regulators. And the regulators, behind the regulators are politicians who come and go.
Okay.
And their vested interests, their personal interests actually override everything.
So how do we deal with that part?
Well, it's a big problem. We all know that the process that delivers political leadership in this country is inherently corrupt. Politicians have to come to power by campaigning. They need money. And once they campaign, they come to power, they have to find a way of getting those money. And they look at natural resources as a place where they can go and recoup money very quickly, gold, fish, etc. So to get them to turn around, I think we have to just build institutions. We have to make sure that we empower fishermen, we empower scientists like us who do research and come up with values, and empower the whole society to understand the essence of keeping our oceans healthy and keeping the oceans productive. If you have a story on fisheries now, maybe one or two people will just click and comment on the web, and you ask yourself why. We have a sector that generates so much money, contributes about 4.5% to the size of our economy, yet people don't seem to be interested. And that is also part of the problem. Society doesn't seem to come to grips with the fact that if we lose our fisheries today, the social economic implications are dire. In fact, the whole country will go into chaos.
Okay. That's serious there. Let me bring in Dr. Kwanzaa here. Doc, before I go to Nana, let me come to you, Doc. How has the prosecution of fisheries laws or enforcement of the laws in the sector also impacted on what we see now on our ocean?
So prosecution in the sector, I must say, is quite slow. And that is also what has contributed to what we are seeing in our sector now. We have vessels that are fined for flouting the laws, and then it takes so much time to recoup the fines from them. Most of the cases are even not settled at all. Usually in the courts, they are sent to be settled out of court. And in the out-of-court settlements, you never get them to pay the exact fines that they are supposed to pay. One of our current research actually states that we could be generating an additional 14.4 to 23.7 million annually if we are collecting the right fines and we are collecting the right licenses. But this is not being done, and so we end up losing a lot in the sector. prosecution could be better, or generally enforcement could be better once the state is able to really prosecute those who are flouting the laws. It also serves as a deterrent for others. The ultimate fine in our law is $1 million US. We've only had one vessel that has been fined $1 million US, but till date, there is no evidence of payment of the fine.
Okay. So then that then falls on the regulators there.
Yes.
That because they are not doing their work, it makes people take advantage of the sector.
Yes. And I can give you some examples. For example, those who catch juveniles. If you take the maximum and the minimum fine that you could have been given if you went to a court, and you find the simple average, maximum minimum divided by 2. If you look at what they actually paid when they go through this alternative dispute resolution, they pay only about 9% of that. And if you take those who are transshipping at sea, they pay about 3% of that simple average. So it makes it so lucrative to engage in illegality. And for every crime is like any business venture. If the cost of, the cost that you pay or the fine that you pay is so low relative to the gains that you make from committing the crime, then there is nothing that prevents you from engaging in that criminality.
Okay.
So that's exactly one of the reasons.
Okay. Nana Jojo, so going forward, what do you expect to change about the fisheries sector such that we can control the IUUs and ensure that our fisheries sector is booming the way it has to?
Thank you, sir. So now I think you understand why I said fishermen can only take 20%. 80% is you had a lot of and undercover things that are happening to industry, and when people start blaming fishers, I have a problem. I personally have a problem with it. Anyway, going forward, I believe that the current sector minister has demonstrated one key thing that has helped industry to begin to revamp, and that is the political will. In actual fact, I think Professor Akpalu and Dr.
Edna Kwanzaa,
I'm sure would attest to that. And therefore, I believe that she's now charting a course for subsequent ministers who will take the office. And now fishers, like Professor Akpalu is saying, fishers must also be trained or have their capacities built such that we can also stand up to some of these things. You understand? If you are a minister, fine, so be it, but you cannot bend the laws. And looking at our numerical strength, we can do it. What we need is the support of civil society. Looking at the nature of the industry and how cartels play within the sector as a natural resource, just like Professor Akpalu rightly said. We will need civil society to back us up, and we can get things done. Now, under this minister, we are getting so many things done, like, from time to time, Professor Akpalu mentioned that there are, now there are measures put in the way to, curb some of these things. Dr. Edna has also said it. So I believe that under the co-management policy which government has actually passed, together we can do it. So for me, I appreciate we are law abiding. We are prepared to see eye to eye. When we don't understand the issues, yes, that is where we have issues. By now, even there should be policies that should stop the felling of trees that have been planted for 200-300 years. We fell them for canoes, and when will we see these trees again? You understand? So we should be going into fiberglass. Private companies have suggested it, but policymakers, where are you? You understand? So many things. We can even be looking at solar to propel our outboard motors. You understand? And then leave this premix issue behind. There are so many things. That is why I'm saying that even the management of our toxic waste from our factories, EPA have an issue there.
Okay.
You understand? Transfer. It is a multi-sectoral industry that
Nana.
fishing alone cannot come up with all the answers.
And I'm grateful to you, but I'll just give 1 minute each to Dr. Edna and then Prof. I want you to touch on plastic pollution and its impact on the ocean and what we need to do. A minute.
Well, as you may know, about 95% of the plastic waste that we generate here finds itself into the ocean. And this has huge implications for marine mammals. You know, a lot of these mammals eat this, they mistake them for food. Sometimes it traps them and it kills a lot of these mammals. And some of them, when they eat them, like shrimps, you have residues of microplastics in them, and that has implications for our health. So in addition to the fact that it affects the ecological systems of the ocean, it also ends up on our plates, and we eat them, and they have health implications.
We are killing ourselves.
We are killing ourselves by dumping these things into the ocean. So it is very important that we take these things seriously, and as much as possible prevent these things, these plastics from ending up in the ocean. Of course, it also comes from elsewhere, because about 80% of the plastics in the ocean are sent there. They are not generated from the ocean.
From the ocean.
So ocean activities. So globally, but we can do our part by ensuring that where the waste, where we dump our waste, are protected, so that when it rains, these things don't find themselves in the ocean. Yes.
Dr. Edna Kwansa, just a minute for me, how we can deal with plastic pollution of the ocean.
Great. So there is another form of plastic pollution which is not very known in the open, but then very important in the sector. That is with the monofilament nets that the fishermen use. And so we at EJF, we have one project that looks at ensuring that the waste monofilament nets, which are primarily made of plastic, does not end up in the sea. That is a net-free seas. So we try to collect these nets from fishermen, and then we have a payback system where we buy these nets, so the fishermen are also able to earn something economically. And we come and process these nets, and we ship them out to be transformed into other durable materials that can be used again, more durable than just the plastic. So this is one way we are trying to prevent plastics from going into the ocean. And we urge our fisher folks, one, they are not supposed to use the monofilament nets in the marine space. But for those who already have them existing, then we try to make sure they don't end up in the sea and they cause chaos or be ghost fishing in the marine environment.
Okay, all right. Dr. Edna Kwansa, I'm grateful to you for joining us. Prof Akpalu, grateful for coming. And to Nana Jojo Solomon, grateful that you could also join. Grateful that you could also join us here by watching the show. This is the AM show. We have more to come your way. There is an interaction with the Hit FM guys. You know what's going to happen this week. Rep Jesse is coming up here. So stay with us. We have some interaction to have with them here. One of the sponsors, Aquadot Mineral Water, will be joining us for breakfast today. Soon will be coming up. So stay with us on the AM show.